Hey, good morning, everybody. It is about 7:55 a.m. on this 22nd of Wednesday, 2014, January 22nd, 2014. You know, it it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that as I'm recording this, that we have entered the 30th year the 30th year of the Transformers franchise. This is the 30th year that the Transformers franchise has been in existence. And I should know, I've been a fan for all 30 years, just like a lot of you. I've been a fan for all 30 years. And like most of you, I was introduced to the Transformers not through comics, not through the toys, but ironically through the cartoon. Yeah. According to my mom, the only real reason I became a huge fan of Transformers was I was 5 years old when this show came out. 5 years old. I'm going to be 35 this July. But I was 5 years old, folks. 5 years. 5 years into existence, into my life. 5 years into my own life. And I was introduced to Transformers in the fall of 1984. Now, true, at 5 years old, you're into a lot of other things. I look back at a few of the old archive, some of the old family pictures during Christmas, and I used to get a lot of toys that weren't totally Transformers. In fact, I didn't get much Transformers at that time because, quite honestly, my family couldn't really afford that much. Well, they could afford them. My family could afford them. But it was more along the lines of my family, basically my parents looked at me being 5 years old and they kind of thought, well, yeah, he could probably play with them, but the way I was, folks, I was a very hyperactive kid. I think a lot of us were hyperactive kids. Let's not deny that, but I was a very hyperactive kid. And being hyperactive, your parents are kind of weary about getting you certain items or certain toys when you were a kid. Now, I did get some other stuff based on other shows I would watch or be a fan of, or being 5 years old would catch my eye. I remember I got a big old Target board. Now I'm not targeting. Now I'm not targeting. I'm not talking. A shotgun target board. I'm talking one of those. It was a Voltron, kind of like. I'm trying to think of the name right now. It's early, so forgive me if I can't really think straight right now. I'm trying to think what those are. It's kind of like the little rollers. They're like pictures that you roll out on a thing and you hang up. I can't really think of the name right now. But it was like that. And, ladies and gentlemen, and it was a dart. Oh, I know what it was. It was a dartboard. That was the name. It was a Voltron dartboard. And I'm not talking just round dartboard, like a regular dartboard. No. I'm talking a dartboard, but with stick balls. That's right. These little sticky balls that when you toss them, they stuck onto the board or onto the wall thing, onto the wall board. Let's just call it that thing, wall board, onto the Voltron board. That's what it did. So that's one of the things I got. I also used to get things like, I remember as a kid, I guess Knight Rider fascinated me because of the talking car. I remember one Christmas, my family got me this little thing, this little toy. It wasn't a toy car, but it was basically like it was it was a Knight Rider toy that you know was was a Knight Rider toy with the stick shift and the wheel. It was really cool. I really had that. I actually had that. And I also had like a little racing set. I think that might have been a Voltron racing set. I can't really remember. I have to look at the picture again. But like I said, I got a lot of stuff based on some of the things I grew up on and gained my interest at the time, being 5, 6 years old. But despite all that, I've always been a fan of Transformers. I was always a Transformer fan. I can remember any time I got home from school, didn't matter where we lived. Well, most of the time, for what I remember, it was for most of the original run. It was Haywood and Fremont that we lived in. So being on Harder Road in the apartments there, and then of course being on Tamiles Street back in the 80s and all that in Fremont. So anyway, like I said, I remember a few times walking home from school and coming home and watching and just sitting down and watching Transformers. I remember just sitting down watching Transformers. I really do. And I also remember this, and I remember doing the same thing when we lived in Tamayo. I remember watching Transformers, and I remember when Transformers got moved to Saturday mornings. Well, majority of the series got moved to Saturday mornings. And I remember watching it then at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I always remember at times reading the TV guide, and when I would see Transformers listed at 9 a.m., but then not see anything else listed on KBHK until 11 o'clock, that told me one of two things. That told me we were either going to get, that told me one of two things. That told me we were going to get Five Faces of Darkness, which was the season 3 premiere. We were either going to get More Than Meets the Eye, which was the series premiere, or more than likely, because of 9 to 11, we were going to get Transformers the movie. And the majority of the time, that's what we got. And I remember one year, my mom told me basically that if I did good in school for 1 week, for that whole week, if I did good, didn't get in trouble, didn't have to have them called or anything, something like that. Like, if I did good, she would allow me, if I did good in school and I did good at home, she would allow me to record Transformers the movie on KBHK at 9 o'clock on that day. And she did. And that's something I've always remembered. And that's something I'm always going to remember, because on that same VHS tape, I recorded Stan Bush's The Touch music video. Yeah, The Touch music video. And, these are just memories as a Transformers fan that I'll never forget. In fact, I could tell you this. I remember as a kid, back in 1986, I was turning 6 years old. I mean, not 6 years old, I was turning 7 years old, actually. I was turning 7 years old. And after watching Transformers for 2 seasons, every day, I truly remember this. I remember my mom, I don't know if my mom called me into the living room to show me something or what, but I do remember that, like I said, I don't know if she called me in to see an advertisement for it, or if I saw the advertisement. I probably saw the advertisement myself, but I remember, though, depending on how I first saw it, I remember that when I first saw the advertisement for Transformers the movie, I was just so happy. I was giddy. I was just jumping up and down. I wanted my parents to take me and even my sisters, even my two older sisters, take me and them to the drive-in or to the theater to see the movie. And being 7 years old, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it. And then I remember around this same time, I think about a week before the movie came out, or around the week the movie came out in theaters, my mom switches over to MTV one time because the girls, I guess, left it on MTV and maybe she was watching something on there as well. I don't know how. But I remember my mom calling me into the living room and she's saying, "Brian, look at this. Brian, look at this." So I walk into the living room. I'm running into the living room, say, "Brian, come here, check this out." So I'm running into the living room, and all of a sudden there's a music video coming on with, she said, I don't know if it was the premiere of the video or what it was, but she told me to come in there to come watch it, and I'm watching it, and I'm seeing the Touch music video for the first time when she calls me in there. And I'm like, I was surprised. Because here was the music video to the movie. Here was the music video to the movie. And I was just blown away. I mean, I was excited, and it got once again it got me excited because it made me want to go see the movie even more. It did. It made me want to go see the movie even more. But again, like I mentioned earlier, being between the ages of 5 and 7, I was basically a hyperactive kid, and being a hyperactive kid, your parents don't want to chance you being in a theater, taking you to a theater or a drive-in to see a movie. Especially at the time when PG-rated movies, basically PG movies meant, could mean, basically a PG rated movie back in the mid-80s, early in the mid-80s, could be the equivalent of anything. It could be family friendly, it could be suspenseful, dramatic, comedic. It could be anything, except for what you saw in R-rated movies. But it could be anything. You had more violence and stuff in PG-rated movies at that time. And this was at a time that, according to some of the commentators, the fan commentators, I should say, on the 20th anniversary edition of Transformers the movie, the DVD, said that at this time, there was no PG-13. You either had a choice between PG and R. And with animated films and with such live action films at that time, you could get away with more violence in a PG rated film, the kind of violence at times and even the kind of language that you normally would probably see in a PG-13 rated film later on in the decade and even today. Yeah, later on in the decade and even today, you would see the kind of stuff you saw in the early portions of PG. And it's like these fan commentators said, the people working on the movie, the MPAA had a choice, PG or R. And since it was Transformers, knowing that kids were going to probably want to see it, they had to go with PG. And basically that meant the creators had to alter and reconfigure and rewrite certain scenes and stuff from what they were originally going to plan on showing. But yeah, basically this, again, like I said, this was at a time when PG wasn't just the equivalent of a PG movie. It was also the equivalent of PG-13. It's kind of like with WWE's programming at times. people look at WWE's programming, and sometimes some of the segments and characters they have borderline up to PG-13. Like one of the recent factions they had come into, one of the recent groups they've brought up from their developmental territory, the Wyatt family, could kind of borderline along the lines of PG-13, if you know what I mean. So that's basically what PG was back then, kind of what the equivalent of what, let's say, WWE's PG program is, with Raw and SmackDown. That's basically what it is. It's kind of like a borderline, a blur between basically what could be considered PG family friendly and PG-13 material. That's basically what it was. And of course, I don't know if my dad heard this at a job or something, but with the way it was described and everything, and it being violent and all, I think my parents in a way may have made the right choice. Maybe. I'm not saying they did, because I still would have loved to seen it in theaters. I still would have loved to seen it in theaters. But I think because of the violence, and I think even the language, I think they heard about this through various sources, friends at church, maybe friends at work, that they decided, you know what, Brian's not going to be able to handle that. Me, Brian, the son, was not going to be able to handle that. So we waited. And I ended up watching the third season. I sort of got a recap with the first episode of the third season, if you will. Got an idea of what happened. And then finally, about a few months later, I was finally able to watch Transformers the movie for the first time. Because I recall we used to, and this was before Blockbuster came around. I think this is a year or so before Blockbuster really became national, if you know what I mean. Really became a nationally known company. And I could be wrong. But I remember 1987. It was around 87, I believe. Me and my family used to rent movies and games from a place called Neighborhood Video in Hayward, California. And I remember we walked in there one time to look at what movies and games we can rent for the weekend. And they had this big board all marked up with, they had this big white board, and they had it separated by different colors. One color would represent what just came in, what just arrived, and basically what was coming soon. And of course, they had the dates of the stuff that was coming. So again, like I said, they had one section on the board that said showed what had arrived, and then another section of the board showed what movie was coming soon and the date it was coming. And I think they even had a section on there for the games. And I remember looking up, and I saw Transformers the movie up there. I did. I saw Transformers the movie up there. I looked up, I saw Transformers the movie. And I think I even saw a poster or something like it that in Neighborhood Video saying coming soon to VHS, and showed the date. And again, like I said, it was even more confirmed when I saw it on the white board, and it was marked in the coming soon section and the date it was coming out. So I asked my parents if they could call up Neighborhood Video and reserve it. Because I knew without a shadow of a doubt, even being 7 years old at that time, going on 8, I knew at that time there would be other young Transformer fans who'd want their parents to do the same thing. And of course, this was at a time that, as many people have pointed out, this was at a time when the movie would come out to VHS for rental first, and then if it succeeded in rental sales, then they would actually put it out to be purchased by the consumer. So my parents actually did call up Neighborhood Video. They reserved it and said, "Hey, when it comes out, let us know." Neighborhood Video called back up and said, "It's in. It's ready for you. Just come and get it." We went and saw it. We went and got it, brought it home, ate dinner, sat down, watched it, and I enjoyed it. I did. And I think maybe my mom might have been a little taken back by the violence in it, pretty much kind of confirming maybe her fears of not wanting to take me to the theaters to see it when it was originally in theaters. But that right there was my start. That was the start right there for me becoming a fan of this movie, because since that day, and any chance I got, through any methods, embarrassing or not, and I've had some embarrassing moments of how I've been able to watch this movie, and I'm not going to say them because I know I'm not the only one here on the YT that's had these kind of embarrassing moments, and we don't really want to mention them. You know what I'm saying? So with all due respect, I'm not going to mention it. But I've gone through different methods of trying to of seeing the movie. I have. And like I said earlier, even to the point that I was finally able to record it off KBHK on a Saturday morning when I lived in Fremont, California. I was finally able to record it there. And I still have that VHS. Unfortunately, the VHS is boxed up somewhere in Kansas. But point is, throughout different methods and different ways, I was able to watch the movie. And I think my sisters have quoted me on, not quoted me, but I think my sisters kind of I think my sisters kind of didn't quote me, but they've kind of basically have stated that I have seen the movie so many times, over 1,000,000, maybe 1,000,000,000 times, that I know it by heart. And why? Because I remember when we were kids, me and my cousin Xavier, anytime we got all together for a family gathering at my grandparents in Hayward, me and him, out of boredom, we would reenact a lot of some of the scenes from Transformers the movie. We would. I'm not joking. We would. And it was really quite something, being a kid at that time. But we would reenact them. We would. Because he actually saw the movie too. He actually rented it too, and then later on was able to purchase it and all that himself. And he was as big a Transformer fan as I was. And again, like I said, he was as big a Transformers fan as I was. How do I know? Because every time we would see him, every time we would go to visit my aunt and uncle's house in Hayward, he would always have more Transformers. He had Galvatron, he had Metroplex, the original Metroplex, he had Ultra Magnus. I think he had some of the G1s, I think he had Ironhide, he had Soundwave, he had Starscream, he had a lot of the Transformers. Because his parents could afford it at the time. My parents could too, but like I said, being the way I was, they didn't want to chance it until later on. Yeah, later on. You see, for one of my birthdays, or I don't know if it was my birthday or Christmas, I actually got my first few Transformers around the age of 7 or 8. I can't really remember. Can't really remember when I got them, but I know it was before I was 10 years old. But it was these were my first Transformers. I got Grappler. I ended up getting Snarl, I believe. The Stegosaurus. I ended up getting him. I think I got Hoist, maybe. I'm not really sure. But those were some of the Transformers I got, some of the first ones I got. And then the prize among all prizes that I still want to try to regain to this day, that I still want to try to get back, Power Master Optimus Prime for my 10th birthday. When Power Master Optimus Prime was released originally, for my birthday, my parents got me it. I could not believe it. And that picture, and the picture of me holding it, it's like, wow. You know, I could not believe I had gotten a Power Master. I couldn't. I don't know what happened to it, but I couldn't believe I had it. But yeah, I had a Power Master Optimus Prime. And that was probably the best Transformer I've had since then. And again, I don't know what happened to it. Maybe it's stored somewhere. I don't know. But I plan to get it back someday. But that just shows you how much of a fan I've been. In fact, there was even one Christmas, we went to Waterford. We used to live in Waterford, California. And even being in Waterford, we used to travel down to Hayward to my grandparents to do a gift exchange at Christmas. And I remember one Christmas, we went down there. And we did the gift exchanges. We came back. The next morning, me and my sisters woke up, and we got some good gifts. We really did. I mean, we were living in a nice house. I think we were like the first tenants in this house. We were the first tenants in this house, and me and my sisters, we ended up getting some good gifts. Good gifts that year. Matter of fact, I remember me and my sisters, we ended up getting Super Mario Brothers 3. We did. And here was what was funny. Me and my sisters at times were always competitive with our cousins, especially my cousin I mentioned earlier and his family, because we were always wanting to be the first. It was almost like we always wanted to be the first to get certain things, like mostly at times certain games. And, you know, they ended up getting Super Mario Brothers 2. Our parents outdid them and said, okay, we're going to get them Super Mario Brothers 3. Or something like that. And that's what happened. We ended up getting Mario Brothers 3. I also got a TurboGrafx 16 that year, which was a surprise. But then something caught my eye. And what caught my eye was one of the presents was kind of like a little rectangular one. It was kind of like really rectangularly, you know, kind of boxed up, if you will. It's kind of like a big box, rectangular box. So I opened it, and it was addressed to me. It said, to me from Santa. It said, to Brian from Santa. So, and, you know, being a kid, of course, you know, the whole Santa thing, right? Well, I remember opening it up. And in there were the 3 Transformer VHSs that my cousin owned. And I'm thinking, my Santa gave me these? I couldn't believe it. But later on, I found out the truth of how I got them. And yeah, kind of shows you how much of a Transformer fan I was and how much my family, my relatives knew I was a Transformer fan, especially my cousins. In fact, I remember one year we came out to visit, and I asked what happened to his figures, and he said I guess he got rid of them or he gave them to Goodwill and stuff. But then he mentioned that if he would have known that I still would have. But then he told me, you know, because I was a little surprised. I thought he would keep them, collect them, or something like that. But he did tell me something along the lines that if he had known that I wanted them, he would have given them to me. He would have. Every single one of his Transformers that he had to give away, he would have given them to me. Which means, if he had known, which, you know, he didn't, I probably would have been owning a lot of the Transformers that he had. I probably would have had the Metroplex. I probably would have had Magnus. I probably would have had Soundwave, all of them. But that didn't happen. And, you know, like my mom says, God has a reason for things not happening the way they do. But that's okay, because as years go on, my fandom for Transformers still grew. And I remember living in Kansas around '94. I guess for the 10th anniversary, they did what was known as Generation 2. And they even did a show on Generation 2. The only problem was this was actually just Generation 1 episodes with CGI cut-ins and effects and transitions, just CGI stuff. Just the only reason they called it Generation 2, even though it was the Generation 1 episodes, was because they were using the Cybermat space cube, if you will, with these CGI-like transitions and fades and all that. So that's why it was called Generation 2, even though it was Generation 1. And I watched it. I did. I enjoyed it. It was G1, but it was just, the only thing that I think annoyed anybody was the CGI stuff. And then I think later that year or the year after, we got Beast Wars, which ran for a few seasons. I think is one of the better, Transformers series out there. And I liked it, and I liked the concept of Beast Wars because it's not a prequel, if you will. It's not a prequel. It's actually a sequel to Generation 1. And I like the premise of it because basically what happens is these descendants of the Autobots and Decepticons, the Maximals and the Predacons, through a time warp or a space warp, end up in prehistoric Earth around the time that the Nemesis and the Ark both crash into Earth. And you have the Autobots and Decepticons currently in stasis mode. Or stasis lock, whatever you want to call it. But to me, this show was so good. It really was. I mean, it definitely not only was a sequel to G1, but it actually included some characters from G1. Yeah. What they did is they continued the whole Starscream ghost situation with Starscream. Somehow his ghost, his vessel, or his ghost, his spirit, if you will, ended up traveling into the space warp and ending up where they were and inhabiting the body of Waspinator. They had Ravage come back as a Predacon. I mean, this was all cool. It's all really cool. So, and, then you had Beast Machines, which was a sequel, continuation, which ran on Fox Kids for a year. Got a mixed reaction. I thought it was okay, but it got a mixed reaction because I think the way the characters were designed and stuff. So it kind of, like I said, it kind of got a mixed reaction. And then after that, we started getting various other spin-offs, mostly anime ones that did all right. Some did okay, some didn't. Some were all right, some weren't. I think probably one of the better ones that they did, honestly, I think one of the better ones that they did was Transformers Energon or Transformers Cybertron, because this is where they introduced Unicron into that series. And Unicron did look very similar, a little different, but very similar to his movie adaptation, or to his movie version. Similar, a little different, but similar. So they did have some hits or misses when it came to some of the other Transformer spin-off shows. And then, of course, 2007 comes around. And even before that, a year or two before, we get word that we're getting a live-action Transformers movie. And then 2007 comes around, the year I came back here, but months before I came back. Months before. I go and see Transformers, the live-action film in theaters, and then later on I buy the movie. What does that tell you? Exactly. I'm a huge fan. I think I saw it on opening weekend, too. And it was easy for me to go see because I was in walking distance I was in walking distance of the damn theater. I was in walking distance. And this was at a time I was currently working for Walmart. And what's funny about this is about a few months after I was working for Walmart, a few months into working for Walmart, we get word that the 20th anniversary of Transformers the movie is coming out on DVD. 20th anniversary edition. And this 20th anniversary edition is supposed to have everything that you always hope for in a Transformers the movie release. Commentary, the widescreen, more than you ever thought you'd get. And it actually delivered. Yeah, I do understand where Zara Nizarak's coming from when he says that maybe the full screen's a little bit better than the widescreen because you don't get so many like miscolorings and pink hot rods and all that. I get that, but I barely notice it. But I'll be honest with you, I don't really notice it that much. I really don't. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's the fact that I just want to enjoy the film and not want to point out any mistakes. Maybe that's just me. Just saying. But I remember when a few months into working for Walmart, and I found out the day they were coming out, the day it was coming out. And at first I thought, Walmart wouldn't carry it. They're not going to carry this movie. Guess what? They did. I remember looking down because one of the benefits at working at a store like this was you could actually see them getting ready to restock and stock in some of the new items. So I remember looking down one time at one of the price tags that were being put up for upcoming for the newer movies that were going to be placed out there. And I remember seeing one for Transformers the movie, and I think even I saw one of the boxes in the unloading area that had Transformers the movie in there. So that Monday night, after I got out from work, I remember just sticking around till midnight. And they brought out all the releases, except for Transformers. And the manager, I pointed out to the manager what it was, and he said, "Oh, let me go get it." And this manager liked me. They liked who I was. Some of them liked me. So this manager goes and gets it, gives it to me, scans it, and I check it out, buy it. There you go. I have it. But get this. It wasn't my first DVD copy of Transformers. It was not my official first copy, though. It was not my official first copy. It wasn't. You see, what's unique about this, to show you how big of a fan I've been in the past 30 years of the past 30 years of this franchise existence. I remember when I first lived in Kansas. My grandmother would help me out at times to get certain things. Because I wouldn't have the money, she would help me or my dad get certain things that we didn't have the money to get, but we would like to have. So I remember one year, she gave me and my dad the money to go to the mall, the Westridge Mall in Topeka, Kansas. And into, I think, a Suncoast store. Because it was in there that I noticed for the first time Transformers the movie re-released on VHS by Rhino Entertainment. So I was able to get the money to buy it. I bought it. It said special edition, I believe. Or I don't know if it said special edition or not. But I got it. Took it home, watched it. And you know what was funny? And even Zara Nizarak, Sean McLean's kind of surprised by this. When I told him it a few years ago, what was funny is that this copy that I got from Suncoast was the European version. Yeah, it was the European version. Rhino Entertainment released not one version, but two. Later on they released the uncut edition, the uncut version. But this, they released the, and I still can't get over this. They released the European version. I'm not lying. They released the European version because I remember sitting down. I was going to watch it in my room when I still lived with my dad, and I remember watching it. And all of a sudden, instead of getting the credits, I got this Star Wars like scroll and narration. And I'm like, huh? And I'm thinking, whoa, did they add something new? And it wasn't until about a year or two, a little later on, did I find out that this is actually the European version. The UK version, it's not the US version, the one I know of. Because I remember later on, when I lived on my own, about a few months later, I think, and I started living on my own, Rhino Entertainment released a special collector's edition on VHS and DVD. And this special collector's edition was the original uncut film. Swear words and all that, but it was the original uncut film. So I ended up getting that one as well. And I think I traded in, or I think I may have left the other one in Kansas, the UK version that I had. But it really surprised me that Rhino Entertainment did that. It really did. And then later on, of course, I ended up getting the DVD version of the Rhino release of the special collector's edition. I got the DVD version. But also throughout all this, there was something else that I got. You see, when I still lived with my dad, like I mentioned, my grandmother, out of the kindness of her heart, would help us would help us financially get some things that we would need and maybe we would like to have. And I remember one time me and my dad went into I think it was a Barnes and Noble, I believe, and it was on Wanamaker Road, right next to the Walmart there. We went in there, and he would go in there to look at some of the books, maybe look at some Civil War books, because he's a Civil War buff. There's no doubt about that. But we would go in there, and one of the first areas I would go to is, well, one of the few areas. One would be comics, and then the other would be the movie and music aisle, if you will. And I remember walking in there, and I remember going over to the soundtrack area one day, doing one of the times we went in there. I remember going to the soundtrack area, and I don't know why, but I just looked down and I started scrolling. You know how you kind of look through the CDs and say, okay, what do they have here? What do they have? What do they have? And I remember looking down, and I pull up one CD, and it's the Transformers the movie soundtrack. Now, what's funny is this is the actual Scotti Brothers release. Yeah, it's the Scotti Brothers release. I'm not lying. It's the actual Scotti Brothers release on CD. And I think this may have been the release by Volcana, re-released by Volcana. I can't really sure, but it was not the release. I'll say this: it was not the soundtrack. It was not the movie soundtrack that was re-released for the 20th anniversary. This was actually. It had the same cover and everything that the LP record and tape had. It was the same cover. Same cover and everything. It was the same cover and everything. And the CD was just a regular clear CD, a regular mirror-like CD with black text on it saying what the songs were, what the title of the CD was. And I was shocked. And I asked my grandma if she could stop, because, my grandma would go to town sometimes with my aunt, and they would shop. And I asked if they could stop in there, if they were going to stop in there to see if they can get it. And I thought, nah, they probably won't get it. They won't get it. But out of the kindness of heart, she did. She got me the soundtrack. I was surprised. So I ended up owning the original, or at least the reissue of the original soundtrack release of Transformers the movie. And then, like I said, later on, and then fast forward about 6 years later, and I ended up getting not just the 20th anniversary edition DVD, 2-disc DVD release of Transformers the movie, but my Walmart store was also selling the soundtrack for the 20th anniversary, so I ended up getting that as well. So yeah, I have a original edition of the soundtrack, and I have a 20th anniversary edition. And then of course throughout my time living in Kansas, I also got myself some other things as well. I did. I started recollecting my Transformers. I started really collecting Transformers and stuff, and I mean, some of the Transformers I got, you can only imagine. I got the Optimus Prime with the stand, I think the MP Prime that they originally introduced at a BotCon or something like that. I got him where he has it's not Peter Cullen, but it's someone that's trying to read off the same lines from the movie, and you press the Autobot symbol and the lines come on and you get the transforming sounds. I got that. I got the Unicron figure from Transformers. I think it was Cybertron or something like that. I got that. I mean, I just started building my collection. I even got an Optimus Prime figure for the 2007 movie and a Protoform figure that has not been opened up ever. So yeah, I started really collecting. And I started really going online to Mile High Comics. Even when I came back here, I started going online to Mile High Comics, and I started basically recollecting and getting back a lot of the comics, the Marvel Transformer comics I had as a kid. I started collecting a lot of the graphic novels of Transformers from IDW and Dreamwave, and throughout all this, I also ended up going to go see Transformers Revenge of the Fallen and Transformers Dark of the Moon, both for my birthdays or something like that. Well, one for my nephew's birthday, which I think was Revenge of the Fallen. The other was Dark of the Moon. I saw for my birthday. And I am going to see Age of Extinction. I am going to see that. But 30 years as a fan, growing up alongside this franchise is just, I still can't believe it. It's been 30 years. I mean, I'm looking right now at the complete Rhino set, of the Transformers Generation 1 series. Yeah, I ended up getting the complete Rhino set. But later on, I ended up getting the 15-disc set of Transformers Generation 1 from Shout Factory. And then, to top it off, I ended up getting all three of the Japanese collection of Transformers Generation 1, which are Headmasters, Victory, and Super God Master Force. Yeah, I'll tell you this. I did want to get what Zero Nizorak has. I did want to get the Matrix edition of the Shout Factory release. Couldn't afford it, so I went with the 15-disc deal. Better than nothing, right? And if that doesn't tell you I'm a Transformers fan, when I lived in Lawrence, Kansas, I went online to a poster company that's ironically in Oakland, California. And I ended up buying not authentic, but basically it was kind of like a reissue of the Transformers the movie poster. Yeah, Transformers the movie poster. And if that's not all, I still have a clipping from USA Today for Transformers 2007 movie in my room. You've probably seen it in the background of some of my videos. And if that's not all, I got one of those little card things that they put together on a plaque for Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. And then recently, I bought Transformers Prime Beast Hunters Predacons Rising, which is very good. You got to see that. But, I mean, man. $30 years growing up alongside it. 30 years. I still can't believe it. I still can't believe it. And what's even more funny about this is I'm still growing my Transformers collection. I still am. I mean, my mom, I'll give you a comparison. My mom's a Beatles fan. She is. She's a Beatles fan. And if there's anything Beatles that she can probably can afford to get, or ask somebody to get for her, about 7 out of 10 times she'll end up getting it. Or someone end up getting for her. I'm not lying. You know why? Because I'm looking right now at 2 pictures of the Beatles that my mom bought while I've been here. I am. I'm looking at 2 pictures. I'm looking at the box for Rock Band for the Wii, when they brought out the Beatles Rock Band. I mean, literally, 7 out of 10 times she'll probably end up getting something Beatle-wise, or somebody will get it for her for a birthday or Christmas. Like, she recently got the new Beatle recordings or sessions CD, Volume 2, for Christmas. She ended up getting that. As well as, I think, maybe some Beatle shot glasses, even though she doesn't drink. But again, like I said, that just to give you a comparison, 7 out of 10 times she'll end up doing that. Maybe 6 out of 10 times, to be more realistic. 6 or 7 out of 10 times. To give you a comparison, because that's how I am. When I can afford to do it, I will end up getting something Transformer-wise. You want a good example? Right now, currently in my Amazon queue, some in my save queue, but in my Amazon purchase queue, which I plan to purchase in a week or two, or a little over a week, I have the Covenant of Primus stored in there, which is the new book, and I have the region-free power release on Blu-ray of Transformers the movie, 1986, region-free. That's what I have. So that, that's what I have right there. To give you an example. And then in my saved queue of it, I have the 30 years of Transformers and a few other things. I even have the 3 featured Blu-ray set of all live-action Transformer movies. I even have Titan Class Metroplex saved up in there. And I still plan to get that too. One of the benefits of having a Walmart now here in town is I can go there, and when I have the money, I can go into the toy aisle and hopefully find some Transformers. Like, hopefully they still have the reissue of Springer. To give you an idea. But basically, ladies and gentlemen, that just shows you how much of a fan I've been for 30 years, and how much I've grown up with Transformers, and how much it's been a part of my life over the past 30 years, and will continue to still be part of my life in some way until Hasbro says this franchise is done. Until the day that Hasbro says the franchise is done, or Paramount says the franchise is done, or whoever, says it's done and gone. It'll always be a part of my life, and I know it's always going to be a part of every single one of you guys listening to this. It'll be part of your life. So, 30 years, hard to believe, and here, ladies and gentlemen, is the 30 more, and that's all I could say. And this coming from a fan of 30 years, growing up alongside the franchise. So, that's all I'm going to say, folks. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you want. Take your time with this, folks. But being a Transformer fan, and any fellow Transformer fans out there, I know you understand. Well, you just got a lot to talk about for going on that pertains to 30 years as a fan. I mean, you can't just say it all in 5 minutes, you know what I'm saying, or even 10. So, God bless, guys. Take care. Comment down below, and peace out.